Hello, I'm Kathy Zwergstas, Business Manager at the East Troy Community School District, and today I'm here to discuss the financial aspects of our upcoming operational referendum. In 1993, the state legislature created revenue limits, which were designed to hold down school revenues from two main sources, property taxes and state equalization aid. By and large, the revenue limits were successful in their quest. However, there was one major unintended consequence to the limits. That consequence was the creation of a completely inequitable funding system that forever locked in funding disparities between districts. This is because the law tied the amount of funding that a school would receive to the amount it was spending in 1992, thereby favoring the districts that were spending more in 1992. East Troy's frugal spending placed it into the 15th percentile of revenue limit amounts statewide in 1993. Looking at the graph, East Troy's in blue, and the state average of per pupil revenue limits is in gray. You can see that since the beginning of revenue limits in 1993, there was a gap, and even until this day, the gap remains. The structure doesn't allow districts that were lower spending in 1992 to catch up. The gap may not look very significant on the graph, but once you multiply the gap by the number of students in your district, the discrepancy is startling. In the most recent year, taking the difference and multiplying by the number of students in East Troy, if East Troy were just at the state average for per pupil revenue limits, we would have $1.2 million more currently in the budget. If you look at the gap cumulatively over the years, the additional funding would have exceeded $26 million. Essentially, we have been penalized for frugal spending that goes back to 1992 for 27 years. And remember, this is only comparing us to the state average, not even to the higher spending districts. Finally, I want to point out that especially in the last decade, revenue limit increases have not kept pace with expenditure increases and the need for increased services and/or unfunded mandates in the areas of special education, mental health, behavioral needs, safety, maintenance, and technology. Bottom line, having additional funds would have a significant impact on the services our school community would experience and on the proactive maintenance we could accomplish on our buildings. A successful referendum would begin to close the revenue cap gap. We have identified the disparity between East Troy and schools statewide, and we know that our frugal nature was what locked us into the low revenue limit figures years ago. We also know that the revenue limits are the reason we are unable to generate sufficient revenues, which is hurting our ability to compete with our neighbors and to cover expenses. But I also wanted to show you some additional data points that frankly are important in today's fiscal climate for schools. For example, sometimes it's hard to analyze why a school that in 1993 also had a low revenue limit like East Troy currently does have more funding. When someone looks deeper, they might discover any of these factors in play. Number one, increasing resident enrollment via local economic and housing growth. Number two, positive open enrollment in, more students choosing to come in via neighboring school districts. Number three, the school has currently been able to pass an operational referendum in their community. This is what we are proposing in our April election. Number four, they just have a larger enrollment size. When we were graphing the school districts, we used the mark of student enrollment over 3,000. 5, they're a union high school, which has some benefits in today's funding formulas. When we mapped each of these characteristics in our surrounding area, we could quickly see some schools benefiting from 4 of the 5 factors in place. These are the schools that are red on the map. We are one of the 3 schools in white on the map, with none of these factors able to help the funding situation of East Troy. We simply are fighting some obstacles that other districts don't have. In addition, in recent years, regarding that factor of having an operational referendum in place, the disparity is growing with those able to pass an operational referendum and those that aren't. In our local area in 1819, those that were able to pass a referendum had on average $346 more per pupil. If East Troy had that, it would have been $571,000 more. In 1920, that disparity grew to $568 per pupil, or $937,000 more if East Troy had that average referendum amount. Frankly, the current funding formula and the disparities between districts is why all schools have tried hard to work with our legislators on a solution. However, at the end of the conversation, no action is taken and we are told, well, you can always go to referendum. We are thankful for the ability to go to referendum. However, that should not be necessary to achieve funding equity for any school. So beyond the why we are needing help with funding, I wanted to explain that the school board has continuously balanced our budget and taxes have been kept low amidst our difficult financial position. In the course of the last 13 years, for example, we have implemented $7.8 million in budget balancing efforts. This budget balancing process has included changes and reductions in all benefits packages, including health, retirement, dental, and life insurances, moderating wage rate increases such that we are now at or below comparable school districts, making energy efficiency gains, eliminating positions, restructuring positions to part-time for benefit avoidance, competitively pricing purchases, applying for grants and gifts, refinancing debt, and prepaying debt to minimize interest costs. As for the property taxes, here's a chart representing that we have kept taxes essentially flat for the last 5 years. In 1920, the East Troy mill rate, the tax rate per $1,000 of home value, is $9.18. This is well below the state average of $9.37 for K-12 districts. With these steps, we hope to show that East Troy has done its due diligence with budgetary measures prior to getting to this point of asking the community for help. Finally, how would the district use the funds generated through this referendum? Currently, a $470,000 average deficit is projected for each of the next 5 years. We would use a portion, $200,000 to $300,000 of the funding for just helping to offset this deficit on day-to-day operation costs. The decision was made to not fully fund the deficit as we wanted to guarantee to taxpayers that we would still be looking for annual efficiencies for reductions in our budget. Basically, it just means that instead of having to reduce $470,000 annually, we would be reducing between $170,000 and $270,000. While still a lot, it is a much more manageable reduction figure that could keep us from having to reduce student programming. The remaining amounts per the chart above would fund large maintenance projects, for example, roofs and boilers.